Do you think Vaush
Yeah.
did a sick trick off the skate park while he was there?
You
For Charlie
see,
Kirk?
you're assuming that the brain worms in my head are so extreme that I will know exactly who you're referring to. I will know about the event that you're referring to, and then I can respond to this joke, and you would be right. But I just want to point out the set of assumptions that went into making that remark. Actually, the people who worked with you thought you were, as one said, quote unquote, totally full of shit.
I actually have all the quotes here. A
Oh, you do?
coward
Yeah.
and a phony, a joke, staggeringly arrogant, totally
Yeah.
full of shit, not smart, and a bumbling doofus.
Yeah, that's what they said.
That is a wide range of insults.
Yeah, Tim pissed off his coworkers. Hello.
There we go. Now I can hear you.
Yeah, it's just I was on a Zoom call with Sater for probably 45 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it just made my computer angry. So hopefully this should be better.
No problem. No problem. So how are you been? Have you been, man? You've been good?
Yeah, man, I'm good.
You
Long
good?
week, but you know.
You know, I just know a lot of people when they write like large articles about right-wing commentators like this. Sometimes they get a lot of backlash, you get a lot of heat. How have you been on that angle? Have you been fine? Not a lot of backlash?
Yeah. Are we on air? I didn't
Oh
even
yeah,
ask.
currently we are on air. Yes, yes. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, no problem. No, I just didn't realize we were officially talking. I thought we were just talking.
I'm sorry. Yeah, everything's live. I'm sorry.
Um, yeah. It's you look. There are some people who are Tim Pool fans and that sort of thing who are a little mad, and that's okay. You know, I didn't expect them to disagree or agree with me rather, and um, the like one or two threats of violence, some light anti-Semitism. It's par for the course.
Yeah, light anti-Semitism. Hey,
Yeah.
look, all I know is like when I look, if I talk to certain conservatives long enough, man, I start the F slur comes out eventually, man. It's like a back pocket like Yu-Gi-Oh card that they got to dispense. They gotta use it at some point. At some point.
Yeah. The triple parentheses, a couple of noses, and like whatever. It's look. I grew up in a New York City where like the idea, I got lucky. My parents grew up in New York also, and when they were kids, anti-Semitic comments were common.
Hmm?
It was just a thing that happened. But I'm of a generation. I'm Gen X, and I can't recall for the life of me a single instance until I started writing words on the internet. So that's a little weird, but it's again. I don't like it. I'm not trying to minimize it. There are people who get it far, far worse than I do. Up from all kinds of minority groups who deal with more crap on a regular basis for just existing online rather than just writing anything. So honestly, I am. Hopefully, it comes across that I'm neither complaining nor minimalizing online harassment, but it's okay. People are allowed to be mad. I said this on other podcasts, though. Look, if anyone has read the article or just looked at the headline and didn't read the article, first read the article. Even if you think you disagree or you don't like me, but I will extend an open invitation to talk with anyone about it, no matter how much they may. You can think I suck, and you can think what I wrote is bad, or you can disagree with the conclusion, but if you want to actually have in the name of discourse and being a little more civil to one another, if anyone wants to talk with me about this story, I will talk with anyone, and my only rule is that you have to stay nice with me because I'm going to be nice to you. So as long as we're both nice to one another, I'll talk with anybody about it.
Wonderful.
For reals.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I should probably do that before I ask people to talk to me.
True.
It seems like the order of things. Hi, my name is Robert Silverman. I am a freelance reporter and contributor to the Daily Beast, and I wrote a story that published this past Sunday about well-known and popular YouTube political pundit Tim Pool.
The Beanie Man himself.
That's the guy.
I recently found out he lives in my state of Maryland, and I was very disheartened at the news that the beanie has infected the great old Lion State. But Yeah, he's out in the woods, isn't he? He's like deep in the woods from what I've heard.
I would rather not discuss his location.
Of course, not his
but,
location,
yeah.
but I hear,
Yeah.
well, from what's publicly available now, he's like a backwoodsman, like hunting bears and stuff,
He,
out there.
I think from what he said himself, he has a very large tract of land.
Yep.
And I think it's fair to describe the place he's purchased there as a compound. I think would be an apt description.
Compound. That
it really is.
That's a scary way to put it. Like, we got to go to the Tim Pool compound. Like, I don't know what I would expect there, man.
Yeah, he's putting out some videos on his fourth, I think now, YouTube channel called Cast Castle. Get it? Like Tim Cast, but it's his castle.
So brilliant.
Yeah. It's wordplay. Yeah. In any case,
it's like my show. It's DylanBurnsTV. You'll never guess my name.
TV. Mr.
Yes.
Burns TV is your name? Okay, got it.
Dylan Burns, last name TV. Exactly.
Got it. That's what I thought. So he puts out videos from there as well. They don't do as well as his political videos. There are a lot of videos of him and his buddies. Sort of. I don't know how to put it. Sometimes they skateboard at two of his custom skate ramps. Sometimes they make food. Dicking around, I think, might be the best way to describe.
Yeah, they're just they're bros being bros. The boys will be boys, as they say.
Dudes rock.
Dudes rock.
Dudes rock, and the Cast Castle is a place to learn more about how they rock.
Do you think Vaush did a sick trick off the skate park while he was there?
You see, you're assuming that the brainworms in my head are so extreme that I will know exactly who you're referring to. I will know about the event that you're referring to, and then I can respond to this joke, and you would be right. But I just want to point out the set of assumptions that went into making that remark. Framing and context.
Isn't it beautiful the type of work and sphere we existed?
Yeah. That, like 6 years ago, I would have understood practically none of those words. Zero, none, nil. But we do not live in those more innocent times.
No. The time of the beanie.
Do I think that I don't know about Vaush's skateboarding skills? I don't know that enough about him to say one way or another.
I heard he played Magic with him.
Magic the Gathering?
Yep.
Wow.
I wonder who won.
Hey, I don't know. Nobody. I don't know. I really can't say. I look, not to get into beef with other streamers or anything like that. I don't know what the utility is of having that conversation / debate thing that they had. Look, I watched it, so ha, joke's on me. But
I got myself to feed, so I watched it too.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think there is a utility. Look, everything that you put on the internet is by definition, I think, to a certain degree, performative. So in that framework, look, I'm talking to people right now, and I'm trying to present, obviously, the best version of myself, and I'm presenting a heightened version of myself. This is not how I would speak if we were hanging out together. It is, to a certain degree, a performance that I am giving to try to put who knows what. But once you put it on the internet, it is going to be, by definition, to a certain degree, a brand building exercise. Mm-hmm. So it's certainly like none of these debates are about anything but, about increasing visibility and point scoring and stuff like that. I do think Vaush, whatever else people have criticisms of him. I don't watch his content that much, so I'll avoid that. But he does a good job of speaking to people on the right and the far right and presenting a progressive opinion in a way that is appealing and doing it in places and in arenas where I think far right individuals would not necessarily get to hear that. So in that vein, I think like things like that are useful. It's just like the whole thing, something about like the sort of friendliness of it made me it rubbed me the wrong way. And I know why Vaush did what he did, and I know why Charlie Kirk did what he did. And there are reasons why, and I realize that to a certain degree, I'm not the target audience for that show.
Yeah, the thing is, always when I watch this, like, what's convincing to me is completely different to what's convincing to somebody who's a libertarian or right-winger. Right. And so I'm never going to be convinced by what what Vaush is doing. But from what I've heard, he performed very well. The audience was very receptive to what he said.
Yes.
My perspective on debate has always been that I think debate is not a topic for like Vaush wasn't going on there because he was going to change Charlie Kirk's mind. Charlie Kirk's mind's not going to be changed because Charlie Kirk wants money from TPUSA. He's the founder of a multi-state, multi-million-dollar organization that benefits from
which is heavily funded by billionaire donors. And for some reason, like these weird racists keep becoming public figures. I wonder how that happens.
So I don't think anytime soon he's going to say abolish the billionaires. But the point is never to, of course, convince Charlie or convince Pool.
No, it's to convince the audience. Of course. And I understand that, and I understand the ways that it works. It's just something about it. Also, the format by definition harkens to this sort of convivial, let's say, English notion that two people can engage in a rousing debate and, sort of go at it hammer and nail, and then everyone goes back to the bar and throws back a few drinks, and it's all in good sport. And it's like, yeah, but it's not all. It's not an elite class intellectual exercise. There are real repercussions to these things, and it's just something about the sort of like artificial chumminess of it all kind of makes me. Again, like I said, like neither Kirk nor Vaush were really speaking to me at all. Yeah. So my opinion is kind of meaningless.
Yeah, and they weren't speaking to me either because I was already agree with everything Vaush was saying, basically.
Yeah. Well, no, I wouldn't agree with everything.
Not
but that's
everything, but most of what they were talking about, of course.
All right, but we're a bit afield. So unless you're assuming that all your readers are already hardcore Tim Pool
experts, of course,
aficionados. Let's call them.
So I wanted to ask you. So the title of this article, of course, is "How Coward and Phony Tim Pool Became One of the Biggest Political YouTubers on the Planet." First, I wanted to ask you, why coward and phony specifically? Why do you think those are the best descriptors of Tim Pool?
Well, that was a descriptor that one of his coworkers at Vice Infusion gave to him. They called him a coward and a phony, and it felt honest. Another descriptor was, if you don't mind my French, totally full of shit, and that was something that seemed like an apt headline as well. Because the reason is because, like, look, Tim has, to this day, now that he's shifted into commentary from the comfort and safety of his own home, he routinely brings up his past career as both a live streamer at Occupy Wall Street. He brings up, the fact that Vice Infusion sent him to all kinds of far-flung locations to report from sectarian violence and civil conflict. And, the image that he has, and he does this when he's, decked out in body armor and all kinds of protective gear, is that, here is the brave journalist that's parachuting into a dangerous situation, et cetera, et cetera. And to a certain degree, what his coworkers told me is that, Tim does not, that the description of Tim's behavior both then and now does not match up to reality. That Tim, look, and I've said this in a couple of other places, so I'll repeat it here because I think it's worth repeating. If someone asked me to go to a foreign country where I don't speak the language, and even if it's not on the verge of an actual all-out conflict, but there is a serious threat for violence between factions, I'd fill 2 diapers. That would scare the bejesus out of me. That would terrify me. In fact, I would probably say, no, I don't want to do it. I'd rather report from a place where I feel like I probably am not going to encounter that much chance of physical harm. Even, look, I haven't even done live reporting from protests where things can get very dicey, depending on whether, whether it's violence from the police or violence from, responsive violence from the protesters themselves. Like, things can get hairy for the press that are in the middle of that, even if you're not reporting on a faction that is openly hostile towards the press. I don't know if I could do it, or do a good job of it, at least. I think, I would. And that's a very normal response for, I think, most reporters to say, is like, wait a second, listen, there are things I want to report for, which probably aren't going to be possibly where the threat of violence to me isn't as high, and I can report on them. There are important things. There are plenty of important things to report on that don't necessarily involve violence, and I'm going to choose not to do that. Anyway, he said long-windedly, I don't begrudge it for Tim being, as one source put it, that he was freaked out by this. But what his coworkers, what bugged them, or at least what they told me, really bothered them, is that Tim would blame everybody else. Whereas if he had just sort of said, like, you know what, I'm not comfortable in this situation, I don't think anyone would have begrudged him.
Blame them for what exactly?
Well, like, blame them for, like, there were times sources said that Tim, just didn't want to leave his hotel room because he felt that the producers weren't correctly assessing the threat in the situation. He would insist on more protective gear before going out in the field. And more protective gear isn't a bad thing. But the thing that what happens is if you're in, whether it's a foreign country or even in a foreign state like Ferguson, Missouri, and you walk into it dressed for war, interview subjects are going to have a problem with that. They're not going to want to talk to you because who the hell are you parachuting into my community assuming that you're going to be met with physical harm? Do you see me as a potential threat to you? It is a distancing thing. So, he would have trouble, according to sources, that he would connecting with people in interviews. And, people didn't want to talk to him. And the other thing is that he would give off this air, according to the people who were on the ground with him, of someone who didn't seem particularly interested in what other people had to say, as opposed to maximizing the amount of attention that could be brought upon himself. So that was like this idea of like, well, I was this, live streamer and I was this in the field reporter and now I'm doing commentary, but it's all part and parcel of the same thing. It's that like, well, no, actually the people who worked with you thought you were, as one said, quote unquote, totally full of shit.
I actually have all the quotes here. A coward
Yeah.
and a phony, a joke, staggeringly arrogant, totally full of shit, not smart, and a bumbling doofus. That is a wide range of insults.
Yeah, Tim pissed off his coworkers. And look, I mean, he also, what happened is that Tim went into Occupy armed with nothing but a camera and was live streaming from Occupy. We can get into the whole what some people at Occupy thought of him. But again, I would just encourage people to read the article. Needless to say,
we've gotten the idea that some people do not like Tim Pool very much.
Some people do not like Tim Pool. Tim Pool, Tim Pool has pissed some people off.
He was bringing nothing to the table. It felt like we were being conned, according to a former Vice producer.
Right. Well,
why would they feel they were being conned by Tim Pool?
Let me explain. So here's the deal. So he goes to Occupy and he's live streaming there. And when he's doing this at the end of 2011 and into the beginning of 2012, this was seen as a novel revolutionary idea. The idea that one person with just their personal cell phone could go in and go to a place where news is happening, get the story, and then, broadcast it immediately to who knows how many hundreds of thousands of people. This was seen as sort of a radical new step and an evolution in journalism, something that was democratized, something that was decentralized, and that this greater access to information as it happened would make us all better informed. And sort of, Tim was sort of seen as the avatar of this movement. He goes around to journalism conferences. He goes to universities. He goes to SXSW. He goes to all these places. And, the sort of question hanging in the air is like, is this the future of journalism? So he's got the star turn going. Mm-hmm. And what happens is, and, Vice hired him about a year and a half after that. But at that time, after Occupy had ended, but he was still this was the rep that he had. And he got paid for 2013 dollars and 2013 media salary rates. He got paid and for someone who had never had a job working in any media company before, he got paid very well. And what happened is that his colleagues quickly found that he really didn't have these skills. I mean, understandably so. He had never done any reporting but the one kind that he'd done at Occupy, which is him narrating what's happening into a camera. turning the camera what happened, speaking into the camera, wandering around. There'd be long stretches where he's just sort of, keeping the stream going all the time, all the time, all the time. That was what the experience that he'd had. So when he goes to this media company, granted, look, there are problems with Vice, there are problems with all kinds of digital properties. But when he goes there, and they're sort of, they're like what his coworker said is like, who is this person who's been brought in, and why is it they don't seem capable of actually doing anything but this one thing? And then the question immediately becomes, wait a second, why are our bosses paying this person so much money to this one thing that isn't even really that valuable?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they said they felt like they were being conned. They felt like, well, he's and Tim would play into this image of himself as the future of journalism. And that pissed a lot of his coworkers off. They found him, someone who, and look, even if he came into the situation with a deficit of skills, what they said was he didn't seem particularly interested in either realizing what it was that he didn't know or working to fix the problems. That he didn't even seem to be aware that there was an issue with what he was putting out, and then he would sort of constantly blame everyone else when things went wrong. So that's hence being conned.
Yeah, I remember him just talking about how at Vice they just didn't want to, I remember him saying how Vice didn't want to do his stories and they wanted a very specific way, kind of like the BuzzFeed route. He kind of talked about them like that was the reason he departed.
I mean, look, you get hired for a job unless you are given absolute authorial independence to do just whatever you want. And I really defy that is a select number of people who just get carte blanche to do whatever they want. Oftentimes, a company will have requirements for a job that do not entirely jibe with your own ambitions and ideas. That's the reality of working for a corporate entity in pretty much, I think, every single field.
Gotta say, being a political consultant is not nearly as exciting as I thought it was going to be. It's mostly data management.
Yeah, there you go. Look, man, we've all had crap jobs. I've had some good jobs. I've had some bad jobs. I've had jobs with a great deal of independence. I've had jobs where I was, if they could have found a robot or a primate to do it instead of me, I don't think that the performance would have suffered that much.
So can I ask you a question about a certain section of this article? There's two big things I want to ask you about. So it says in 2020, continuing through 2021, a rotating cast of Stop the Steal activists. I mean, I can believe that, of course. I mean, everybody had those people on. Literally, Fox had everyone. Capitol rioters. Which specific Capitol rioters did he have on?
Brandon Straka.
True.
From the walk.
You're all right.
From the walkaway movement, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was at the Capitol riots. I was the dumbass there in a Biden hoodie. I made that idiotic decision for some reason, and I knew that place. The thing that always gets me about that is I don't think anybody has properly described how it was like to be there, because there's so much stuff that happened there that's not even talked about anymore.
I can't imagine. I watched that 40-minute documentary that the New York Times put out, and that was kind of my main takeaway from that was, wow, one or two things played out slightly differently. There would have been a lot of dead people in that day.
There were certain times where we were looking up there and we were just getting reports of gunfire. That's all we were hearing. Right. It's gunfire. Not like one shot was done and that was Ashley Babbitt, of course. Just reports of gunfire, and then we saw smoke just rising, and because we were deploying gas. And so we saw Trump flags on the Capitol, reports of gunfire and smoke. It looked like there was a legitimate, the government was about to be overthrown. That's what it looked like. Eventually, I made the even worse decision to get closer. And of course, everybody saw me in the fucking Biden hoodie and they threw insults at me. I grew up in the DMV. So the way I thought when I was there was, this is my community. You're from out of state. I'm going to wear what the fuck I want. That was the way I thought.
I think you might want to rethink that.
This is my community. I'll wear this color if it doesn't associate with local gangs. That's a great idea. But I remember watching them assault the press, and this is an interaction I have never seen like reported widely. That I don't know if I was one of the few that saw it, but the press was assaulted. Most people know this, but
Mhm.
if you do enough digging, but the reason why they're assaulted is not regularly covered because they had their own little press pool. You know, they had a little one of those metal gate barriers
Yep.
that they
Yep.
Usually have, and so they
Yeah.
started to cover what was going on, which was they use an easy word. I heard one of them say the riot behind me, right?
Hmm.
And that pissed off one of the Trump people who had an American flag, and he got up to them and yelled at them and started waving the American flag in front of their camera so they couldn't record. Then more people came around. Then they started pelting them with water bottles and objects, tore down the metal barrier, pushed them all away, and then smashed all their cameras. The reason why they attacked them and destroyed all their equipment is because they were angry at being described as a riot because they were so peaceful.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Okay.
strange? A little ironic.
Yeah, a little bit. A little
So
bit. In any case, what was your question?
I
I think we.
wanted to keep going down this list. You said specifically
Sure.
Pizzagate promoters.
Yeah, Mike Cernovich,
Mike
Jack
Cernovich.
Posobiec.
Okay. Grifters, anti-vaxxers, anti-Semites, yeah, and neo-fascists. Which ones would you describe as neo-fascists that have been on his show?
Which one was that I described as neo-fascist? Gavin Wax would be one.
Hmm?
A lesser light of the far right that probably most people have heard of. He has some very very serious. I would include Cassandra Fairbanks in that list of neo-fascists. I would certainly include Lauren Chen in that list of neo-fascists.
Mm-hmm. Lauren
Let me
Chen, of
see.
course. Yeah.
Yes, Lauren Chen is another one. Let me I have the whole list, and I'll bring it up
Mm-hmm.
like the responsible journalist I am. So I'm not trying to remember things in my slightly brainworm-ridden brain.
I appreciate it.
Uh, do, do you have any music you can play while I'm looking up, loading a Google Doc?
I got long
Something
hair. I'm pretty
interesting.
enough. They can just look at me.
Neo-fascist Karen likes Lauren Shen, and then Darren Beatty would be another for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what if somebody was to walk up to you? All right, let's play devil's advocate for a moment. Say, well, you know,
Sure.
this is Tim. You know, he's a reporter. He is a journalist with integrity. He is bringing these people on because he just wants, you know, to have a discussion, and he believes in free speech, and that's important for our democracy. What would you say to something like that?
I would say, technically, yes, you are right. Tim Pool, like, I'm not saying that these people should not be subjected to interviews or, critical reporting or anything in that line. Tim does not, and hasn't for the entirety of his career, done. What he does is he gives them a platform to espouse far right and right wing views, and do so in a more palatable, sanded down way that is going to, if before an audience that reaches even now like 3 million people a day. Like Tim Pool's reach tops that of many on one video, can easily top that of like even close to primetime cable news audiences, and he does it for a younger crowd too. Like when here's an example. Tim Pool, back at the end of October, I believe it was, it was the first week in October, interviewed Enrique Tarrio, who is the former chairman of the Proud Boys.
Yep.
A reporter or a journalist can absolutely interview Enrique Tarrio.
True. They could be like, "Hey, why'd you burn the property of a local black church in D.C.?
Well,
Why'd you
yeah.
do that?"
I mean, granted, this was October, so Tim
Okay.
could not have foreseen that. But there are still all kinds of questions you could ask of the chairman of a far right street gang. That is not to say that Tim is not. What Tim does is Tim does not actually press them on any of their views or hold what they say up to any kind of critical analysis. Tim just allows them to talk, and in many instances, just say things that aren't true. For example, what Tim did with Tarrio is, I believe it was from Wikipedia. I could be wrong about that. My memory of it may be wrong, but he found a definition of fascism somewhere. And he read out all the steps of what a fascist believes. And then he allowed Tarrio to just say, no, we don't believe that. Because as you know, when someone is on the far right, they have to respond truthfully to every question.
I've got the ultimate test for you, by the way.
Yeah,
I'm gonna prove to everyone you're not a racist. Are you a
sure.
racist?
No.
By God, you're a civil rights
Yeah.
icon.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically the same thing. I mean, he like, first of all, like it's like him reading that definition out loud, and they're like, do you believe, like, dear Enrique, do you believe that the needs of the state should be put before the individual? Enrique Tarrio, no. Oh well, then I guess he's not a fan. So that's what he did. He brought Enrique up in a soft focus profile that allows Enrique Tarrio and the Proud Boys to defend themselves, and not just defend themselves, but to like misrepresent who they are to the world and to his audience. And I bring up the Tarrio mention as an example because guess what? A recorded conversation between Tim and a few of his associates was leaked to me.
Uh-huh.
And in that recorded conversation, and this is in the article, what he says of the Proud Boys is this. It seems like they just go to places where Antifa is going to be to start fights and then play the victim.
Bingo. So
now that, Tim, is congratulations. At least 9.5 out of 10. That is an accurate and pointed description of what the Proud Boys do.
it is. I was at the Million MAGA March where they were. And
right.
I was attacked by the Proud Boys with a bunch of other counter protesters. We were just standing there. And a few of us, like, there was a few people with shields because, they were scared that the Proud Boys might do something. And what did the Proud Boys do? And we have the video evidence. We have the video evidence of it online, publicly. They just charge up and start assaulting people. I got maced. A girl got stabbed. And we had to go get her medical attention. Like, the Proud Boys they say that they want to stop Antifa from going to local communities and riling people up. But the people they were attacking were locals. The people they were people from outside the community who came into DC to assault locals and burn the property of local black churches. If the demon they paint of Antifa is literally that. Someone who goes and destroys the religious foundations and attacks locals randomly and destroys. That's what they did in DC.
Yeah, and you're not going to believe this, but Tim certainly did not say anything like that to Enrique Tarrio on air. And in fact, not only did he not say that, he made a video, I think 3 weeks or so, or maybe a little bit longer, after the recorded conversation, in which he said that the Proud Boys, look, I don't think they should be going to places where Antifa are, but they act in self-defense 9 out of 10 times. So
would it surprise you to know that I've never seen them act in self-defense in any of my interactions with them?
No, it really wouldn't. But I'm just saying that, like, that's what I mean. So when people say, why can't Tim interview these people? What's wrong with that? Why can't you hear both sides? Well, I was like, you absolutely can. I think the reason the Proud Boys are going on Tim's show is because they have a certain degree of confidence that they won't be pressed on any of those things. That Tim won't, that they'll allow them to present themselves in the best light possible, even if it, strays so far from reality it becomes fiction. I mean, the other thing Tim mentioned in this conversation is it's not just that he's making videos where he says things like they acted in self-defense 9 out of 10 times. It's not just that he's getting them there for a softball interview. And it's not just that he's, in private, seemingly doing a far better job of analyzing the situation than he is in his public persona. It's that the day before, on September 6th, there were protests in Salem, Oregon. And the Proud Boys, lots of far-right people, including Proud Boys, were there. There were certainly far leftists and Antifa there. Battles broke out. The Proud Boys instigated, shocker, a great deal of violence. Some were arrested. And there was a video that was making the rounds, as it does on Twitter quite often, of a leftist getting, like, smacked in the back of the head with a bat of some kind, or like a truncheon or something, or, steel bar, by this huge guy. And like, just not, it wasn't a self-defense. Like, the guy's walking, and from behind him, the guy just clocks him. And it's caught on video. So the video, gets shared because it's bad. Tim initially, and I'm not exactly sure what he said because I didn't catch the tweet before he deleted it, but initially he said something to the effect of that was condemning the Proud Boys for doing this. In the recorded conversation, he says he got a message from Terrio, and Terrio told him to delete the tweet because that's not a Proud Boy, and quote unquote, you're going to get my dudes hurt if you share this information.
Well, by the way, can I
Which
ask,
is
was it
false.
a Proud Boy?
You're not going to believe this. The guy's wearing a Proud Boys t-shirt.
Wow, what an amazing scenario.
I know. Who would have thought?
Can I tell you that I actually sent the footage of me being attacked by the Proud Boys to people within the organization? Like, okay, then if you don't start fights, what's this? And they dismissed it. Would you believe that?
Well, like I said, fascists are known for always telling the truth. So clearly they were right, and you were lying. You were fake newsing.
I was
fake rude of you.
It was a really complicated deep fake. I hired some actors.
You clearly fake newsed it.
I fake newsed it very hard. I wanted to ask you about something.
So in any case, that is a long-winded, long-ass answer to Tim is just being a journalist. I was like, Tim is not just being a journalist. Tim is a megaphone and a frictionless entry point to a lot of people to some very right-wing and far-right ideas is, I think, the easiest way to describe what it is he does.
Can I ask you about a specific thing that Tim Pool has denied that I'm very curious about? Seth Rich. His Seth Rich stuff. He a while ago he's made posts on 4chan. He's talked about this on videos, and he was with some, I forget I think it was a crypto or a hacker person that he associated with.
Kim.com.
That guy, Kim.com. And he now, and I watched his show with Destiny. He did a show with Destiny streamer Stephen Bonnell, and he denied that, and he talked about how all these news organizations were slandering him and saying he was never a Seth Rich truther. Can you tell me anything about that?
Yes. There's a video, by the way, which I highly recommend.
Redeem Newquest.
From everyone's pal, hey, it's Vadim, who sussed out, who broke this all down in an entertaining visual way. I highly recommend everyone give it a watch. What happened is that Tim made a bunch of videos in 2017 claiming, and he comes up with this figure, who knows where, with a 57 to 65%, because of what Kim.com said, he believed Seth Rich was the person who leaked the documents that were eventually published by WikiLeaks. So that's what Tim said. So a bunch of people. Now, it wasn't written about in 2017. In 2017, these were some, like I said, Tim wasn't nearly as popular as he is now.
He also made posts on 4chan as well, if I remember.
Yes, he did. He did. He said some. I'm not gonna. I'll leave what he said on 4chan aside, and I will encourage everyone to watch Vadim Newquist's videos, which delve into this in great detail.
You check it out. In the YouTube video, the link will be about right here. There's the thumbnail.
Right.
Check it out.
But here's the thing. Very briefly, if you're saying, I believe with a 57 to 65 or whatever chance that Seth Rich was the leaker, I think any reasonable person can say that you are lending credence to the conspiracy that Seth Rich had in fact leaked these documents.
Of course. If I said that's probably what happened on anything.
Right. To date, there is absolutely no evidence that in any way suggests that statement is true, that Seth Rich did leak those documents. Kim.com saying it's true is not a good source for that. But leaving that aside, what Tim said was he helped to push this conspiracy theory along. Now, nobody paid attention when he said that in 2017, but in 2019, he gets an invite to the White House Social Media Summit, which also had people like Stop the Steal organizer Ali Alexander, Count Dankula, Zyklon Ben Garrison sent an invitation until people started noticing all those slightly anti-Semitic cartoons that he drew, and he got uninvited. But in any case, it was a sort of compendium of the extremely online right trolls and other delightful individuals. So Tim goes, and when they're writing up, like, who is this Tim Pool person, the mention that he promoted the Seth Rich conspiracy gets included in a bunch of write-ups, like Tim Pool, who the former, a YouTube pundit who promoted the Seth Rich conspiracy. That is not the most flattering description one could make of Tim Pool in 2019, but it is also not. It is not inaccurate.
It's not
in fact,
an inaccurate description.
Right. It is an accurate description. Tim got extremely mad about this. The videos from 2017 where Tim said this are deleted.
Of course.
As far as my reporting goes, I cannot say for sure whether Tim deleted them. They were deleted by YouTube or some other entity. But they're no longer there.
State, probably.
Yeah, probably, possibly the Rothschilds, maybe Soros. I can't say for sure, but they have been deleted. That's absolutely true. Vadim found copies of them in the Internet Archive. God love him, Vadim. And you can see what Tim says there, and also people had grabbed clips and thrown them up in tweets. And Tim basically lied to Destiny's face and said he never did that. And there were all these retractions. I think there was one site that may have changed the wording. It might have been Variety. I could be wrong if it's not you, Variety. I apologize. But like a lot of different sites wrote this. Tim threatened to sue on Twitter, which is the main forum for filing a legal document. But it was just this very sort of clear example where, like, okay, maybe he made a bad call in 2017. Most people, when that gets written up, would have said, like, yeah, okay, I screw that. Look, there are things that I've written over the course of my career, in online, in writing on the internet, that now, if you ask me about them, I'd say, yeah, I don't agree. I don't agree with what I wrote then. I've changed my mind. I was wrong. Or I got something, or like I made a prediction and it turned out that I was dead wrong. You cannot you can only spend so much time actually, putting things out into the world and not take a couple of L's. Everybody does. I mean, I don't think, it's like, yeah, he did promote that. But Tim's response, and he does this often, is when confronted with something that's sort of wrong, he doesn't really know how to say, okay, yeah, you're right. When I said that was totally wrong. He will sort of generally say, well, look, I make mistakes all the time. I'm not perfect. I'm just a guy who turns on a camera and talks about his feelings. But when he says things like that, it's to give himself, that's a general blanket excuse as opposed to taking responsibility. I mean, you saw this. There was this clip that made the rounds the other day where he's been saying a lot that, he's been sort of complaining in this vague way about, well, if people are homeless, then they're responsible for their own situation. I'm not responsible just because I, Tim Pool, have a lovely house. Yeah. It's not my fault that they're
French Revolution
homeless.
Take recently.
That's the one. That's the one where he's like, well, I'm not then it's my responsibility to take in all of these indigent, or all these people who find themselves without a place to live and take them in. I am responsible for their poor life situation. No, they are entirely responsible. And to their credit, one of Tim's co-hosts actually said, well, I mean, yeah, but to a point. And the example that he gave is, well, in the French Revolution, if the monarch is hoarding all of the things that the community produces for himself under threat of violence, well, then those who are suffering and going without cannot be entirely to blame. And Tim refused to realize, okay, yes, there was a way out there. That's the amazing thing. Yep. Tim could have easily said, okay, yes, you're right. In the situation of a monarch who is hoarding all the means of production by force and doing so under threat of violence, yes, then they aren't. But we don't live in a situation with a monarch. We live in a free capitalist society. And therefore, every individual, there was a way out of it. All he had to do is say, okay, you have a good point. But instead, he doubled down and said, no, they are entirely responsible. And so what do you do with a monarch? Tim, not really understanding the entire history of feudalism, went with, they could leave and go live in the woods.
Brilliant.
Point. there's really nothing to do when you get to that point. But I mean, that to me is a really funny example for anyone who's spent a lot of time watching Tim Pool
know that
videos.
The king's authority ends at the woods.
Yes, it does. The woods are like Robin Hood.
Yes.
Once you reach enough greenery, you can claim eminent domain.
Yes.
Everyone knows this.
It's like those little tiny micronations. You just create one.
Yes. Look, it's everyone knows that a verdant field of wheat is it's the same thing as the sovereign citizen movement. You can just say that it's yours, or
So,
that would make
I wanted to ask
nice,
you about
actually.
something that's always scared me about
Sure.
Tim Pool and right-wing commentators, a lot of right-wing commentators online. Civil War almost fetishism, it feels like. Where constantly it's like, it looks like we're going towards civil war, stock up your guns, get in the woods. You even talk about that specific clip in your article.
Yeah.
What is it with Tim Pool and the Civil War? I gotta go to the bathroom real quick. I'll be right back. You have my audience completely for this segment. I'll be right back.
All right.
What is it
We're
with
gonna
Tim Pool and Civil War?
All right. While Dylan is gone, we'll talk a little NBA basketball at the end of this. But what is it with? Look, I think it's important to recognize that like there are a lot of different forms of media. There like say cable news, tabloid journalism, really any all kinds of digital journalism. They all do like fear and anger sells. This has been the case in publishing for a long time. It was the case with TV news. It was the case with cable news. It is the case with tabloid reporting. It is the case with truly, the elite of the elite mainstream journalism. The old icon being, if it bleeds, it leads. So I don't think Tim's obsession with Civil War is in any way out of line with any of those obsessions about the ways that people will use anger and fear to try to sell you a product. I think it is part and parcel of the same thing. Tim going to, maybe I have not consumed nearly enough other digital media producers, but to a certain degree, I think Tim is unique to the degree to which almost anything, any instance that is roiling the online right, Tim will use it as the subject of a video and then point to the fact that a civil war is coming. I'll give you one example, and this is mentioned in the story. There, a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, I think, it was a local story in Minneapolis, I think, again, maybe, that a George Floyd mural got hit by lightning, and it destroyed it. Now, like I said, it got written up by the local press. It's not really a big story. Mural gets hit by lightning. Naturally, the MAGA Twitter seized on it, and a bunch of them started making jokes about, haha, it is God's will. Look, this is God striking down the evil libs. That's what's going on here. So there were a whole lot of tweets in that vein about God deciding he hates Black Lives Matter because a George Floyd mural got hit by lightning. Normal stuff. Tim makes it the subject of his video. And he starts out, and this is a very classic way that Tim will do things. He starts out by explaining what's going on. Then he decides to introduce the controversy. And the controversy being all the tweets, I think Donald Trump Jr. got it off one, about how, look, this is God's will. And if there's one person that I associate religiosity and God and spirituality with, it's definitely Donald Trump Jr. About this. Yeah. That is a pious...
God's will took him to Africa to shoot endangered species.
Right.
That was God's will.
And then he sort of, he introduces these tweets. That's how it suddenly has become a newsworthy story. And he sort of, he slightly downplays them. He says, he's not a particularly devout or religious person, or he at least doesn't believe in any organized religion. And he's sort of gently mocking the tweets from the right, which is how he suddenly positions himself as, see, I'm not a hardcore partisan. I am slightly taking the piss out of Donald Trump, etc., Jr. here. But by the end of this 20-minute video, he has talked himself into such a corner that he uses the phrase that, he goes, well, people on the right are necessarily more creative, and they build things because they build companies and they build businesses, and America built, look at the way America was built out from nothing, and et cetera, sort of basic, standard American exceptionalism talk and about the general greatness of capitalism. And then he has aligned that necessarily with conservative. Whereas the left, you see, they just want to destroy things. They want to destroy this amazing country that gave people opportunities, that fought against, that did vote in the civil rights movement, leaving aside the 200 years before then, that did, and the left just wants to destroy. And then, of course, he's bringing up the protests and being like when they burned all their cities to the ground. And he finally reaches enough of a lather that he says, it makes me wonder, is the left just definitionally against the natural order of things?
What does that even mean?
I'm
right now. I'm drinking an ice drink. This is made of
Sure.
so many chemicals and nonsense. What does he mean? What does somebody mean a natural order? It always baffles me.
It's a basic way. I mean, it translated into modern conservatism. Basically, he's asking if voting Democrat is against God's plan. Is the way I understood it.
When they started it by making fun of Trump. I mean, Trump Jr. For mocking.
And this is why people like Tim constantly reuses. And this is important. He reuses that phrase I'm just a milquetoast fence sitter. See, I took both sides here. I made fun of the conservative tweets, wondering if it was God's plan, but by the end of the video, I actually agreed with them. That is not centrism. Although that's why Tim likes to call himself a centrist. He thinks that or at least I'm guessing. I really honestly don't know what he thinks. But taken as a totality, just using this one video as an example, that's centrism that both sides have been heard.
I do want to say, don't you know, he worked for the Great Lakes Coalition, the Human Rights Campaign, Greenpeace, and Children's International.
You read the whole article. I'm so proud of you. No,
he worked for all these things. He's such an expert, though. Can you talk a little bit how much of an expert he is on these types of organizations?
Yeah, it's a funny one. Tim spends a lot of occasionally he will mention that he worked for nonprofits, and he gives himself these titles like fundraising director or director and manager at several nonprofits or a fundraising director at many nonprofits or I think it was an outreach director and special project. I don't know. He gave himself some very serious titles that are a real job description in the nonprofit world. And it was actually I think it may have been, and this was a while ago when I sort of started looking into this story, but it may have been one of the first things that made me go, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. Fundraising director is a well-paid job that it takes for a nonprofit, that it takes a long time to attain, that it requires a specific set of skills, and 95% of the time it requires a certain kind of degree. And Tim dropped out of school at 14. Is it impossible that he could have held this?
What was the reasoning he gave for dropping out of school at 14? I remember it was something he was too smart for his teachers or something.
Yeah, he said my comprehension level was higher than most of, or many, or I forget which, many or most of my teachers, is brilliant. What he said.
He's so brilliant.
Yes, and this was, according to him, he came during a year when he got all Fs in a progress report. So, he dropped out. But in any case, it just made me go wait a second, those are real, yes, it is possible for someone who drops out of high school to still become the fundraising director at a nonprofit. That is certainly possible. It is not outside, but it is
American dream.
It's not likely. It's not likely. So I just, I found occasions where he actually named the nonprofits he's worked for, and so I called them and I asked, and they all said they had no record of working for him. What Tim did was he did street canvassing.
That you literally could. You just call them; they'll give you that. I mean. If I could, then I've worked for everyone. If that's the case,
right?
Hell, I worked for the. Hey, did you know I worked for the Bernie Sanders campaign? Yeah, I knocked on doors for him.
You were a fundraising director for the Bernie Sanders campaign.
I'm a hot commodity.
Right. I mean, so he says. I mean, I think the highest level position at one of these nonprofits he could have attained, he may have actually had some responsibility in some way, some supervisory role over other street canvassers. That's what the one nonprofit said that I spoke to. They didn't have any records of whether he was a street canvasser or a field manager for some other street canvassers, but they said that he worked for them for 2 weeks. So
moment. There's a certain Tim Pool fan in chat who's been molding. Can I try to just give it, since I'm not a big Tim Pool fan, can I try to just ask you one question from them? Just give them a little moment.
Yes. No, give them the moment. Ask. I want to hear it. What is it?
Okay. So I'm gonna give him, because he's been molding for the last half an hour. I'm gonna give him one chance.
Okay.
One shot.
Sure.
Okay, you gotta be Eminem. Okay, this is your one shot. Your one chance. You can't let your arms weak. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, not mom spaghetti, my man. This is your one shot. Here we go. Here it is. I'm giving it to him. You can keep going while he writes up this question, but I'm just really excited because he's been going for like
no, I want to hear it too. I actually want to. I like I said way back when we started talking. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody who.
Would you talk to Tim Pool? That was one of his questions he asked earlier. If Tim Pool invited you on your show, would you actually go on it? If he was like, I hate this random hit piece article, because that's what the guy in chat called it, a hit piece.
Yeah.
Would you go on?
I don't think so. I don't think there would be any point in me having, like I said, I don't think there's much value in debating as a sport, and like Tim isn't going. I doubt. I would be very surprised if Tim would be willing to hear the things I said. I just don't. I don't think that's gonna. I'm not doing this for entertainment. I didn't write this for entertainment value. I wrote it because I think if Tim Pool is reaching the number of people he's reaching, I think it's important that people know what kind of person he is, and what the kind of things he does. And so that's what I wrote about. And I wrote about how people who've known him viewed him. So it's not like I don't want to go in there and just like have two of us sort of at loggerheads because it would be good sport. It just feels it would. I've said everything. Would I talk to him one-on-one? Yeah, sure. I'll talk to anybody.
Okay, so you would talk to him one-on-one, but you wouldn't go on his show.
Sure. No, okay. I don't want to. I don't think there'd be any value in that, either for his audience or for.
So I think he might have ran away, but I have some old questions that the guy said. Okay. This is a smear. He doesn't actually know what Tim believes. He is forming a biased opinion with no knowledge of the actual individual. It's fiction. Let me read one more. Wait.
Yeah. Wait, can I answer that first one first?
Sure.
Because that's important, actually. He is correct. I have no knowledge of what Tim believes. And honestly, I don't think it's actually that important. What I reported on are his actions and his statements, and how those actions and his statements have impact in the larger world. And I reported on his actions and his statements from prior to his career as an independent YouTuber. I don't think, look, not to get all existential and can anyone know another person, et cetera, et cetera. I am not making any value judgments about what Tim actually believes. I don't know what Tim actually believes. There is no way through reporting to find out what Tim actually believes. I included in the story almost every single thing that he said in response to my questions. So I certainly did include his point of view. There was one that had to be removed because it was a potentially defamatory statement. I unfortunately am not at liberty to say what that is. So I definitely I am listening to what he has to say. But again, I think people are I do think that's an important point. I am not judging Tim Pool as a person. I am not judging what Tim Pool believes. I am reporting on what he says, and I'm reporting on what he does. And that is the limits of what I can do as a reporter. And so I'm absolutely repeating in those limits. Do I have personal opinions about that? Sure. I think it is I think objectivity is definitely a myth, but the story itself is not about my personal opinions or my personal beliefs. The story is about what Tim has said and done, and the story is about how other people responded to what Tim has said and Tim has done. So I do want to make that clear. So next question. Yeah, what's the next question?
So I do want to say also, I don't believe that debate is sport. I believe it's sports entertainment. Okay.
Okay.
But I want to. There's so many questions. I want to ask you about the cat. There's so much I want to ask you.
No, I want to hear from the guy who was the Tim Pool fan. That's what I want to hear from. Okay. I want to hear his question.
Okay, I'll ask you one more. This guy is full of shit. He always admits his wrong. He was wrong. Are you fucking kidding me? The guy obviously has only watched select episodes. I remember recently he also said that you only watched like 2.
No, I never said that. I probably watched like
No. I meant I said CS said that you only watch like 2.
who's CS?
That's the guy I'm talking. That's his name in chat.
Okay, I swear to you, CS. I watched at a minimum 200 hours of Tim Pool content.
Jesus Christ.
That is a conservative estimate. If you,
You want a Purple Heart?
No, I don't. I get very obsessive about reporting things like this, and I try to be incredibly thorough about them. I would say certainly on like in the last 3 months, I watched pretty much every video he made, and
Damn.
so you can get like like.
What's the weirdest thing
I
he
didn't
said in all of
I
the
didn't
stuff
even
you
watch
watched?
the weirdest thing he said. I mean, the thing about the French Revolution was definitely up there as one of those Tim moments that made me just sort of have to reorient my vision of the world. But like, no, I watched 200 hours. Tim, right? I think what he's missing is the difference between Tim saying, "I got this thing wrong," and opposed to Tim saying like, "I get stuff wrong all the time." That he absolutely does. He says like, "What? I'm not perfect. I get predictions wrong. I get stuff like this wrong all the time." Yes, that he does. What he does not do is own up to specific mistakes. And saying I get stuff wrong all the time reads like a hand waving away of responsibility for putting in the research into the things he says. For like, here's one example. This got a lot of traction on the twitter.com was Tim's prediction of a landslide for Trump. Tim, that was Tim Pool-ocalypse edited a 2-minute video with lots of instances of Tim saying Trump's going to win by a landslide, Trump's going to win by maybe a 49 state landslide a few times. So, Tim saw this and his response, both he said on his YouTube videos and that he said on Twitter, is that those were tied to specific circumstances like him nominating Tulsi Gabbard or Andrew Yang to be a part of his cabinet, or pardoning all nonviolent drug offenders, I think was the third one that he gave. In any case, the only reason I said that could happen, like a landslide is going to happen, is because in these rare circumstances that Trump did something that was entirely out of character. Mm-hmm. That's not true. That's false. Tim repeatedly said Trump was going to win. His opinion, but yes, that's what we're talking about. His opinion, and he said that he said he thought it would be a landslide. As late as, I can't remember. I think it may have, off the top of my head, I don't remember when this video was. I think it may have been October. He was saying Trump's going to win, but these Democrats, I don't know, they're rigging it. And with the late batch of the mail-in ballots, this is when everyone was sort of preemptively freaking out about mail-in balloting. And he's saying like Trump's going to win, but the Democrats, they might just like pull these shenanigans. I'm paraphrasing him badly in this instance, but I'm saying like there was, again, Tim could have easily said like, yeah, I fucked that up, but he didn't. He doubled down and he got defensive, and he did it like when this was. And here's another example. All right, this is actually the example of Tim that I think gets to the core of why, like, I thought it was important to write about him. There was an episode, January 20th, the night of the inauguration.
Yep.
That Joe Biden is now president, and Tim and Jack Murphy, that's his pen name. He is I'll use Jack's description of himself. He is one of the leading voices in the men's space on Twitter.
Is he one of those men's rights activists or something?
I think that could be I'm not going to use that term, but that's a term that people could use. He got fired from the DC charter school system for, you know what? I'm not even going to get into it. He's got some very interesting opinions about, he's an anti-feminist, let's put it that way. And if you're interested in reading more, I encourage you to
a good old classical liberal.
Yeah, he's an anti-feminist. I would encourage people to use their search engines and read some more. In any case, it's Tim, it's Goldman, it is good old longtime 9/11 truther. Luke Rudkowski is there, and also there is Lydia Smith, his booker. So they start off the show by getting very mad about how the press isn't being critical enough of Biden. And you know what? Tim might not believe this, or Tim's fans might not believe this, but I also think that the mainstream press, is being far too easy on the Democratic president. I would agree. I agree 100%.
Yeah, depending on the issue. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, depending on the issue, I think there could be more hard-biting scrutiny of this current president. I feel like, yes, I am not. There was a great deal of scrutiny of Donald Trump. I felt like in many instances it could go farther, but in certain way it was low-hanging fruit because it got there was a very clear, like. Without getting into it, let's just leave it aside. There's a lot of reasons why the press would go full hog into investigating him. One reason being all of the crimes and the corruption. But leaving that aside, so they're getting very mad. One thing that they're mad at is the socialist magazine Jacobin, which printed this cover of Biden as a saint. Jacobin is a socialist magazine.
I remember the cover. The cover was satirical in nature. It was making fun of how the media portrays him.
Right. In that instance, Jacobin agreed with Pool that they were being the larger mainstream press was being too soft. Tim and the rest of the gang didn't catch that and thought that Jacobin too legitimately thought that Biden was deserving of sainthood. So they talked about that for a while. Again, a clip of that started making the rounds on Twitter, and people were, I think Hassan Piker made a video about it. Some other lefty YouTubers made a video about it, and they laughed sort of at the obliviousness of not understanding that what was going on. So Tim says, first thing he says, and I think this was in a tweet, but it may have also been in a YouTube video. I can't recall right now. There's a link in my story, so if you click, you'll be able to tell. But he said, look, we said we thought it might be satire. We said that later in the episode. I watched the entire episode. You can go to a point 20 minutes later where they for a half a second they say, "Wait, are they being serious or are they making a joke?" And the others are like, "Well, it's so hard. I don't know. I can't say for." And then they let it go. So they didn't really return back. The title of the video is they truly includes the phrase, "They truly are worshiping him." So if they thought it was a joke later in the episode, it didn't make it into the descriptor in his YouTube video. So again, Tim, when confronted with a screw up, decides to misrepresent what happened. But the thing that the Jacobin cover got everyone to do a lot of laughs. And then Tim did this other thing in the video, and he said this on YouTube, which is that, all of these people who are making fun of us, I'm trying to unite people. I'm trying to unite people against the machine. And all of you who are laughing at me are just playing into this divisiveness. And it's get a hold of yourself. Come on, buddy.
So we don't have a lot of time left. So I wanted to get this.
Let me just wrap up this one thing about the Jacobin.
Then I wanted to ask you a question that I'm really interested in because I just want to make sure I get this in.
I'll say this very quickly. So here's the thing that happened. After they were done talking about the Jacobin cover, they riff onto a bunch of quasi-related subjects. And at a certain point, Tim says that that the powers that be introduced identity politics into Occupy Wall Street to drive white people from the movement. And then his co-host says that actually sort of casually makes this weird joke about all Native Americans being cannibals. And then Murphy starts sort of he's riffing about the left and the people of color, and he says that since the 1960s, the left and the Democratic Party in particular have been using people of color as a hammer to target white men. And he specifically says white men. And he says, I think the exact phrase is the nail is white dudes and the hammer is people of color and the state behind them. That is classic, that is down to a KKK tracked white nationalist propaganda. You know how cliched a white nationalist thought that is? It's in the movie The Blues Brothers. When the Nazis are on the bridge, one of them is shouting into a megaphone, "The Jew is using the black as muscle. White men, white women." That is hardcore white nationalist propaganda. And in the video, Tim's like when Goldman is really getting on a roll, and Rutkowski is sort of agreeing. It's like, well, the FBI, the CIA. So Tim changes the subject, sort of awkwardly. So I asked him about in my questions to Tim. I said to Tim, I repeated Goldman's quote, and I said in the episode, you did not say you disagreed. So I'll ask you now: do you disagree with what Murphy said that the state is using black people of color to harm white men? And Tim didn't answer. Tim's answer was, well, and he named a couple of lefties, Vaush and Destiny among them. He goes, when Destiny says, Destiny made certain claims on air and I didn't contradict them either. Which means that he didn't answer the question.
He wouldn't answer the question. Why wouldn't he
Do
answer the
you
question?
agree? Well, there are three possible reasons. The first one is he does think the state is using people of color to hammer white men, but he didn't want to say it on the record. The second possible reason why he might have said it is because he doesn't agree with that, but he did not want to go on the record and say that his, frequent guest, Jack Murphy, was wrong. The third possible reason is all he read of the question was where I said, you didn't contradict him, and he didn't read the rest of the question, so he just answered that part. And again, just to go back to this thing of
we got 3 minutes left. I really want to ask you.
Go for it. So to me, that's the essence of Tim. You can't know why he said, like, whether or not the reasons why he said that are incredibly cagey, or it's because he actually believes in these white nationalist ideals. The end result is the same, which is the audience gets to hear white nationalist dogma. Go for the question.
I want to ask about his report. If you have any thoughts on his reporting in Turkey, his reporting in Venezuela, and his reporting in Thailand.
God. That is not something I can cover in 3 minutes. Pass. Move to a different question. Those are their own.
Can you just give me a general theme of his reporting there?
I think we discussed it. That, look, Vice and Fusion had a vested interest in someone they were paying a very decent salary to, looking like they were, looking good. And I think a lot of Vice employees, the ones who I spoke to, felt like part of their job, and they said the same thing at Fusion, that part of their job was to make this expensive hire look good. And occasionally, like the videos that you'll see out of that time, a lot of them are, perfectly solid documentaries, but I don't think they are necessarily reflective of what the experience of working with Tim in those locations was. I think it'd be the best way to summarize it.
Thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, man.
Extremely enlightening. I advise everybody to go read the article and to follow you. If we can get his link in Twitter, I would really appreciate his link to his Twitter. His name is Robert Silverman. He is a really good reporter. What I really loved about this article in specific is if any of you in chat had a single problem, because I know I have a very diverse audience. If any of you Tim Pool fans, you had any problems with anything he had to say, everything here is linked. Everything is sourced. Every other line, every paragraph has at least like 3 to 4 links in it, and it's interesting because the thing is, you could make a full feature film out of this article if you want to use all the links.
Can I say something really funny?
Sure.
At like 2:30 in the morning, the night before before the article was published, I was up because there were too many links in the article for the content management system, which is the system that produces things online, for it to publish on the website, and we spent from 1 to 2:30, I was me sitting here freaking out while the tech staff was trying to say well, could you remove some of the links and maybe then we'll be able to get this to go on the internet. There was it was literally, I spent a half an hour trying to delete as many links as I can. We got it in with the full amount, but needless to say, my editors were pissed at me for including at that moment for including that many links.
Well, as somebody who's reading it, I appreciate you putting all the time to include as many links.
Sure thing, man.
It really is helpful, and I think that a lot of people can use these links to just... For me, when I started learning about foreign policy, because that's what I specialize, it was always using one article to then just start a kind of building a tree, using it as the seed, and then finding the links that it connects to learn more about the conflict. And right here, you basically have everything you need to know about the Tim Pooliverse with all these links.
Listen, let me tell you something. If you see a link that links to one of Tim's videos, I queued it up to the moment in the video where he says that.
God,
okay?
that is, I could not. I mean, you deserve a Purple Heart, okay?
No, it's fine. It's fine. My brain was already internet poisoned to begin with. No harm, no foul. I'm good.
Well, wonderful. Well, I'm going to go do some of that entertainment television that I love so much. Okay, you have a good one, and you keep doing this, man. This is some really good reporting. I'm really happy.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Dylan.
I'm happy we had this interview. You have a good one.
You too.
What a great interview.